It was the height of summer, July 3rd, 1972. A group of 25 young people from Florida had arrived at a quiet, remote campsite in the North Carolina mountains. The place was called Briar Bottom. It was beautiful, green trees, a cold mountain river, open space. It felt like another world. They had driven for 2 days to get there. Some rode in cars, others in a colorful Volkswagen van. They brought tents, guitars, coolers full of food and drinks, and just enough supplies to forget the world for a while. The river was shallow and clear. Hemlock trees swayed gently in the breeze. That evening, as the sun set, music floated in the air from speakers set on top of the van. Most of them were between 16 and 26. They weren't strangers. They were friends, artists, dreamers, kids trying to find peace. Some had long hair, some wore beaded necklaces. They called themselves hippies, but mostly they just wanted to feel free. One of them was Stan Altland. He had blonde hair to his shoulders, wire-rimmed glasses, and a quiet but confident smile. Stan had helped organize the trip. He had recently opened a health food store back in Clearwater, a place he dreamed would become a center for art, politics, and change. That night, Stan was relaxed. He wandered around the fire, chatting with friends, drinking beer, taking small puffs from joints passed around. But mostly, he observed, he liked seeing people happy. As darkness settled, people began to do their own thing. Some stayed by the fire, some went for a walk. One camper, Kevin Shea, picked up a stick and joked that he was going to hunt snakes. Others passed around a bottle of Jack Daniels, sharing stories under the stars. Sue Cello, just 18, was sitting near the edge of the woods, smoking a cigarette and laughing loudly. Max Johnson lay in his sleeping bag nearby, half asleep already. Stan found a small tree and laid down to rest. His girlfriend, Kim Burns, joined him on the ground. They looked up at the sky together. Phil Loki, Stan's close friend, went to grab his bedroll from his car. It was peaceful, like time had paused. But not for long. Somewhere around 11 p.m., a few girls saw lights on the other side of the river. They blinked, thinking maybe it was other campers arriving late, but the lights weren't steady. They flickered, and then 2 trucks rolled through the shallow water, without headlights. The trucks stopped near the parking area. Doors slammed. 7 men stepped out. Even in the dark, it was clear. They were carrying weapons, shotguns, pistols, flashlights. They moved through the trees in silence, fast, like they knew exactly what they were doing. Phil Loki stood still. He saw them coming, and for a moment, thought about running. But his feet didn't move. These men, they moved like a SWAT team, not like campers, not like neighbors. They reached the fire pit quickly. Campers were startled, half asleep, half high, trying to understand what was going on. One of the men, wearing a tan jacket, muttered something like, "What's the problem?" Or maybe, "Do you have a problem?" No one was sure what he said, but everyone could see what he carried, a 12-gauge shotgun. Without identifying themselves, the men began yanking people out of tents, waking those on the ground with kicks or jabs from nightsticks. One girl screamed, another covered her face. Kevin Shea was still joking around, until 2 of the men grabbed his arms and took his stick away. Stan, startled, stood up and raised his hands. "Hey man, we're harmless," he said. "Just be cool, everyone. Just do what they say." But the men weren't listening. They frisked the campers one by one, took their pocket knives, their lighters, even a small bottle of prescription pills from one woman's pocket. The campers asked who they were. No one answered. Phil Loki whispered to someone next to him, "I think they're cops," or something close to it. David Satterwhite, the local boy who had guided them to Briar Bottom, sat quietly near the fire. His white dog stood beside him, growling low. One of the armed men, later identified as Sheriff Kermit Banks, pointed his shotgun. "Put that dog up or I'll shoot it," he said. David tied the dog to a tree and stood up slowly. "Don't I have any rights?" he asked. Banks didn't answer, just stared, shotgun still raised. Phil Loki watched the scene from a distance. He couldn't believe it. A teenager arguing with a man holding a loaded gun. Stan stood a few feet away. He looked concerned, but calm. In that instant, everything changed. David reached out to gently push the gun aside. The sheriff reacted. The gun fired. The blast echoed like thunder. Birds flew from the trees. People screamed. But it wasn't David who had been hit. It was Stan. 9 pellets of buckshot, thick, heavy, deadly, slammed into his chest and neck. He staggered. "Oh my God," he gasped. "Somebody help me." Kim held his hand. Poonie Porter rushed over, tearing off Stan's shirt to try to stop the bleeding. But it was already too late. His eyes just froze, someone whispered. He tried to say something, but only gurgling came out. Then nothing. Stan Altland was gone. The deputies didn't know what to do. They stood frozen. The sheriff reloaded his shotgun, but said nothing. For a moment, the forest was completely still. Blood pooled on the moss beneath the tree. Kim screamed. Sue Cello cried out in anger. "You shot him!" she yelled. "You bastards!" But no one responded. Finally, a ranger appeared with one of the trucks. The sheriff and his men wrapped Stan's body in a blanket and dragged it to the truck bed. Then they drove away. No ambulance, no justice, no apology. The campers were left behind. Some were still handcuffed. Others sat in shock, blood on their clothes, too numb to speak. They had come for peace. What they got was trauma. Phil Loki, sitting quietly, thought, "They're going to shoot us all. They'll bury us in the woods." I thought I was dead. But no more shots came. Just silence. Stan's friends would never be the same again. Some couldn't talk about it for years. Some still have nightmares. One said, "It was the sickest thing I've seen since Vietnam." Another said, "He stood there with his hands up, and they still shot him."